Josh Looney, Brad Young, One Arrowhead Drive is Chiefs Live, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers. You can smell it in the air, Brad. Football.
Oh, that's
it's
what
back.
That's what that is.
Football. That's what that is.
I was wondering what that was.
Chiefs off-season program began yesterday morning, and with the CBA, it's not exactly what we've come to know in the past, but it is still off-season workouts. It's still guys in the building. Short and sweet. Right now, the Chiefs begin phase one of a 2-week period of strength and conditioning work. The strength and conditioning coach will be on the field with the players, Brad, but you're not going to have Romeo Cornell out there. You're not going to have Maurice Carthon out there or Brian Dable, but you can still get some work done. You have 4 workouts per week within a Monday through Friday period. The Chiefs have it structured Monday, Tuesday, off on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They'll do that, mainly a strength and conditioning focus for the first 2 weeks before they move on into the second phase of the off-season program, which essentially lets you do a few more things out on the field. But you really don't start the on-field activities as people know them, the OTAs, until late May. That's your phase 3, and you can do that for several weeks. So it's a condensed NFL off-season program, but hey, it shows football's back, and just with the draft around the corner coming up in a week, we're there. It's fully football for off-season mode.
It's starting to feel like it is football. You know, it seems like the season didn't get over that long ago, and a few weeks ago we were in New York and we saw the players for the Nike launch, and we've just been doing all kinds of things, and you know, we've been talking to free agents and all this kind of stuff, and you know, when the draft comes up, that's in my mind when it really starts to pick up. But OTAs is really the time. You know, it's been about 2 years since we've gone through this. You see the players, they're in the building, you see them around. It just seems like the energy in the entire building, everyone, it's not just the football side of the organization, but the business too, starts to ramp everything up because it's April, folks. In 2 months, it's going to be June. It's summer. I mean, I know everyone in Kansas City was really happy that it hasn't snowed yet and we're crossing their fingers. Unless something weird happens, it's not going to snow. It is almost football season.
And it was basically a ghost town here for the past few months. People don't realize you have the scouting and the pro days, so your scouts are out, your coaches are out, everyone's on the road, players aren't in the building working out. They're working out at Lifetime Fitness or 24-Hour Fitness or wherever it may be in town, or a lot of them don't even work out here in Kansas City. But it's like the doors open for business officially on Monday. And you're right, it breathes life back into the building when the players get in here and they do their workouts. Again, they're not on the field right now. It's mainly a strength and conditioning portion. 2 weeks from now, they'll be able to go out and do some on-field drills with coaches, but it's not a practice setting. That doesn't come until the third phase of the off-season program. And really, football in its true identity, while we'll get some things done in OTAs and minicamp, the hitting, that doesn't come until training camp, Brad. So this is all the underwear Olympics, as people like to call the shorts. But you have a new offensive coordinator in Brian Dable.
Free agents, everyone comes in, you get to go through all that kind of stuff, get to know people. Because, you know, a lot of people say it every year, it's all about team chemistry. This is when team chemistry starts. This is where, you know, when you get in deep into the playoffs and you see those teams that just come together, they always say, you know, we've had this dream since OTA, since all this stuff. This is where it all begins. So it's, you know, of course football fans are going to get excited about it, and the players as well, because this is literally when the 2012 Kansas City Chiefs season begins, in my opinion.
On the program today, we will hear from strength and conditioning coach Mike Clark explaining what the Chiefs are going to be doing this week and next week at the start of the offseason program, a little bit how the Chiefs are going to handle the injury situations with players going forward this offseason. We'll also hear from Kevin Boss, who's he's had a wild offseason. He's been to Haiti, he's moved from California to Kansas City, and he's here in the building doing his offseason work with the other free agents who have signed as well. We'll hear from Kevin Boss. We'll also bring in Lance Zierlein of the SidelineView.com as we continue our countdown to the NFL Draft. Lance Zierlein, one of the best, I think, in the business as far as providing insight on more than just first-round picks, more than just your top guys. This guy knows the draft left and right. We'll talk about his mock draft that has come out, one that's about to come out, and what he thinks are possibilities, not only for the Chiefs at number 1 at the 11th pick, But in the second round, maybe some mid-round running backs that we talked about last week on the show, things that could fit Kansas City's draft needs. So we'll get to that later on the show. But let's start with Mike Clark, as it is officially, as Brad and I said, football off season, I guess we could say. It's officially football here at Arrowhead. There's life in the building. The players are back, and Mike Clark breaks down exactly what the Chiefs will be doing as part of their off-season program. The Chiefs' 2012 off-season program has begun, and with us on Coach's Corner is strength and conditioning coach Mike Clark. Coach Clark, it's finally underway. You didn't have an off-season program last year. You're pumped to have one really for the first time in 2 years now.
It seems like it's been longer than that, and I can assure you some of the reactions of the players will be like it's been longer than that too.
This first, I guess it's 3 phases now under the new CBA. So this is phase 1, and for fans that don't understand the phase, really, it's 2 weeks of just strength and conditioning. No football drills, no individual drills. They're with you. They're your guys for 2 weeks. What's your approach going to be in this period?
The first 2 weeks is I'm going to continue a phase of training we've been in for a while, but it's called adaptation. It's just high volume of lifting, not really heavy loads yet. We still will introduce some of the power work and cleans and throws and some jumps, and then we'll do some general running at this point. And then after 2 weeks, then we'll get a lot more specific and become a lot more dynamic in our training.
I remember when you first came in and guys got their first taste with you, and I was talking with them in the locker room, and they'd say, we're doing stuff I've never done before. I've never seen it. Like, man, is that what you're talking about with the dynamic? Is that kind of the feel? Is it some stuff that maybe guys who haven't worked with you are going to be surprised at how their body feels after they work out a bit?
Yeah, I would think so. We've already had a little of that. I'm not going to say that we do things that nobody else does. I'm not that smart, but I do pay attention to the latest trends. We work at it, and yet the more things change, the more they stay the same. There may be things that they've never done before, but it's not things that have never been done before.
Before training camp, a lot of times we have a running test. There's a conditioning test. You're going to test them when they first come in to see where they are?
No, we won't do that, because if you do that, some of them will have been training very well, and they'd just knock it out of the park. Others, probably not so well, and you're risking an injury at that point. So no, I don't think we'll do that. I think what we'll do is we'll just start training like we normally would. But normally, once we get up and running on Fridays, we start doing some running that is aimed a little more towards preparing them for the conditioning test. You just need to do it 1 day a week, because of the other types of running also has a conditioning effect to it. But Friday we'll get them ready for the 300-yard shuttle.
After phase 1 is over, the strength and conditioning portion, obviously, it doesn't end, but other things can happen, whether it's working with drills, individual drills, or actually going on the field when OTAs begin in May and June. As those phases 2 and 3 of the off-season program start, how do you adapt the workouts you put the guys through?
Well, phase 2, still the most important thing we'll be doing is training, running, lifting, and we're going to try to be developing them to make them better athletes, faster, more powerful, so they can accelerate faster, stop faster, change directions faster. So when I said that training gets more dynamic, that's when those workouts will take place.
Coach Grinnell talked about Tony Miyake, Eric Berry, Jamal Charles, and coming off their injuries, and how he'll proceed with caution and slow with them this spring, make sure they don't push back too fast, re-injure themselves. How is each different player and what they're coming off of affect you and what your plan is for them?
It depends on how far along they are and who the player is. But their injuries happened early in the season last year. So they've had a lot of time to get ready for this, and they should progress quite well with us.
A lot of these guys, they check in with the trainers and with you guys, but they've been rehabbing at a special facility, whether it's in Texas or Florida, wherever they may be training. Do you get the updates on what they've been doing up to date when you start with them from the specialists they've been working with?
I get updates from the trainers. They talk to us all the time about how they're doing and what's going on. When they come into Kansas City, come to town for checkups, I get to see them all the time. They normally work out for 2 or 3 days. So I get a pretty good idea of where they're at and how they're doing.
Mike Clark breaking down the Chiefs off-season program, what's in store. Brad, it's been an off-season of storylines as you go through it from the start of free agency with Brandon Carr, Kyle Orton, to the exits of those guys, to Peyton Hillis and the players who have come into Kansas City, to where really the storyline right now across the National Football League is the NFL draft, and there'll be phase 2 of free agency. After the draft, teams are going to start signing players again to fulfill those needs. But if we focus in on this off-season program and the storylines there, what do you think is the biggest storyline of the Chiefs for this off-season program? I'm talking players in-house, working out, doing things on the field with the coaches.
Well, I think anytime you have a new offensive coordinator in any system, any team, Brian Daboll's been there, done that before, but with the Kansas City Chiefs, this is his first year working with a lot of these guys, implementing his system. Although some of these guys, such as Peyton Hillis, Brady Quinn, have been around him before, this is the time where he instills a lot of the values and stuff and fundamentals of his offensive scheme. So when it comes into week 15, week 16 and postseason and on, the things you learn now will eventually build into wins on the field. So I'm really excited to see the offense and Brian Daboll and how everyone works together in this new scheme and system.
Yeah, it's about speaking the same language many times. Brian Daboll's not going to throw them something they haven't heard, but they might say it in different terms. And you mentioned winning games. Well, I think that everyone would agree, especially after last year and the starts of the Chiefs, the horrific starts of the Chiefs season, those first 2 games where the Chiefs under Todd Haley did a very unique approach to training camp, and many felt they weren't ready for the beginning. I think many would say that training camp plays a big role in wins and losses early in the season, and that's true. But to have a successful training camp when you have a new coordinator, you need to have a successful OTA period and successful off-season program. So you're right, Brian. I couldn't agree more. It starts right now, and we're going to learn a lot more about Brian Daboll. A lot of people have opinions on him. NFL Network, I was actually very surprised their take. Of course, Matt Castle, they asked if you can win with Castle. There's a history there. I think that's fair. They're also showing, though, can you win with Brian Daboll as an offensive coordinator? The guy hasn't called his first play in Kansas City, not in practice, not in a game. I think we don't know exactly what he's going to bring. He has 3 years in this league. He's taken some different approaches. He'll take a different approach with the Chiefs in many ways that we've seen. And I'm excited to see how he puts this offense together. You see him there with Reggie Bush. He's got some of the same guys, type of players in Kansas City as he did that were successful last year in a place like Miami. Brandon Marshall, Pro Bowl season last year. He was a number 1 guy with not a ton around him in the receiving ranks. Well, Dwayne Bowe, you can look at that. And then you have some complement players in Breston and Baldwin. Reggie Bush, kind of a slash guy. I kind of put him in the Dexter McCluster category. Get the most out of Reggie Bush last year. Is he going to be able to get the most out of McCluster? And are we going to see McCluster exclusively as a running back? That may pin into what the Chiefs' draft needs are coming up. And if they spend a mid-round pick on a running back, is McCluster going to be exclusively at a running back, or is he going to split out and do some things wide? Will Daboll bring in more 4 wide receiver sets? If so, do the Chiefs draft another receiver? Do they bring in another receiver through free agency? I think there's a lot of questions still that remain this offseason, and a lot of it center around Brian Daboll and his approach to this team. And truth be told, Brad, me, you, Mitch Holthus, our fans, we don't know exactly what to expect from this offense under Daboll. So there's some excitement, but there's also some mystery as you begin this offseason program. Exactly,
but I'll tell you what, anytime that you have weapons, you are in a really good position. And if you look up and down the Chiefs roster, and if healthy, anyone in the media or the league or any fan will tell you that if the Chiefs are healthy, their weapons are ridiculous. And if it all comes together, and Brian Daboll has a proven track record of using what he's given and turning them into something extremely positive and being able to, utilize, like you said, Reggie Bush. The guy had the best. Last year, Reggie Bush had the season that everyone thought he was going to have every season coming out of USC. A lot of people think he was a draft bust and this and that. Well, the guy's contributed a lot, including to a Super Bowl win. But Brian Daboll, with Reggie Bush and Peyton Hillis, were able to find out what their strengths were and basically, I wouldn't say cater an offense around to what they're doing, but basically use their strengths and limit plays or formations that put them in their weaknesses. And at the end of the day, Reggie Bush, Peyton Hillis, and a lot of other names that you may not have heard of, like Charles Clay last year against us, he knows how to attack offenses and he knows how to utilize players. And if you have this many offensive weapons on a team as the Chiefs do, I think Chiefs fans should be excited for that coming.
Yeah, Charles Clay, you're alluding to out-scheming the Chiefs last year. I think Romeo Cornell would tell you that the Chiefs were out-schemed up and down the field.
He's not afraid to think outside of the box and use, unconventional methods, which I completely agree with. I think, a lot of people, I don't know what they would call it or what they would refer to it as, but, it's almost like a college type of system in a way where it's like, he's not too proud to switch it up every week to get a win, because at the end of the day, a win's a win, right?
That's what Brady Quinn said. I asked Brady Quinn what we know about Brian Dable.
Exactly.
He said he's not afraid to mix and match. You're going to see a lot of different formations from week to week, and maybe a guy who's not afraid to take risks, not afraid to take chances, and not afraid to shake things up. Fans who were frustrated with the offense last year, well, if you're going to criticize the offense last year, then that's what you want. If you can't criticize the offense last year and criticize Brian Dable before he's called a play, because if he has that aggressive nature, well, I heard it too much. Run, pass, punt. Chiefs' offensive plan last year. A lot of frustrations with Todd Haley and Bill Muir as the season went on. The Chiefs had one of their lowest scoring seasons, really since the throwing game became a big part of the NFL. And it was a bad year offensively for Kansas City. So if you're going to pick your criticisms, I think it's unfair to criticize Brian Dable before he has called a play. It's a switch in philosophy than we saw last year, and I think that change is a welcome change. You also mentioned what he does with players if healthy, which brings me to my offseason storyline. I think above all things, all other things, it's about the return of Jamal Charles, Eric Berry, and Tony Muoki. Three huge playmakers, all lost within 3 weeks of each other last season, all to left ACL injuries. We probably won't know truly how those players bounce back until we see them in training camp, because the Chiefs will take it lightly with each of those guys. And without hitting, without the full cutting, we're just not going to know until the preseason starts. However, I think it's a question, I've said it all offseason. I brought it up with Mitch. I brought it up with you, Brad. There's an assumption out there that these three players are going to rebound 100% from their knee injury. There's no reason right now to think they won't, but I still think that's a dangerous assumption, because even with the advancements in technology and treatment and surgery and recovery of knee injuries, every player is individually different. Every player is unique in how they return, and you never know until you get them on the field. I started looking back, Brad, especially running backs. I think I'm a little bit less concerned about a guy like Eric Berry and a guy like Tony Muoki, even though Muoki has the injury history, just because of the positions they play. Of those three guys, the most concern I have is with Jamal Charles, because he's such an important piece of the Chiefs' offense. Number one, he changes the game if he's not available to you. It changes your offense. We saw that last season. But number two, he's built off speed, he's built off cutting, and he's built off explosiveness, and a guy who's a burner in the open field. And if he loses some of that, it could affect his game. So I wanted to know success stories and failure stories of running backs who have gone through ACL surgeries. And as expected, as you would expect, Brad, you've got the whole list of success stories all the way to the Kajana Carters that had promising careers, got injured, and were never the same player, and the career was done. Let's start with some of the biggest success stories. Jamal Lewis of the Browns and the Ravens, maybe one of the best success stories in National Football League history from a running back who suffers a torn ACL. Jamal Lewis tore his ACL in 2001, bounced back the very next season in 2002 to rush for 1,300 yards with a 4.3 average. Pretty good. The very next season, Brad, he led the entire NFL with 2,066 yards, averaged 5.3 yards per carry. Jamal Lewis, we know, tough guy, but he's a guy who bounced back immediately. The next guy I want to talk about, let's go down to Edgerrin James. This is a guy who fits in kind of the 2-year window. A lot of running backs you see, and this may be a Charles category, especially if they take it easy with him, it has a 2-year rule. They returned to that pre-injury status in their second year after. So in Charles's case, that would be 2013. Look at Edgerrin James. He has back-to-back 1,500-yard seasons in his first 2 years in the NFL. Tears his ACL in 2001, comes back in 2002, rushes for just 989 yards, under 4 yards per carry that year. Then in 2003, he rallies off 5 consecutive years of 1,000-yard seasons, had a couple 1,500-yard seasons in there, had his Pro Bowlers. Pro Bowl seasons. Edgerrin James fits the category of the 2-year rule, which a lot of these running backs fit into. As we go down, there's another success story in Willis McGahee. He's gone through all sorts of knee injuries, from the college level and from the pro
Of anybody
game.
entering the draft, I remember in college, Willis McGahee was an absolute beast. And in college, I believe he tore his right ACL and ACL, and then maybe his left ACL. He basically tore out both knees, where if you went back like 20 years, the guy would never play football again. I would doubt the guy would even be able to run again. But then he continues on to get drafted and just goes beast mode on people, just like, I'm sure you got some fancy stats.
Well, everyone remembers the injury. It was pretty gruesome. I believe
Very gruesome.
He injures it in the bowl game, misses his entire rookie season in 03, then bounces back in 04 with 1,100 yards, 4.0 yards per carry. And we saw him in Denver. He had a great bounce back year this past season. Willis McGahee is a success story from the ACL. Another guy who played at the University of Miami, who's been a success story bouncing back from ACL injuries. And this didn't happen at the pro level. He had it all through college. Frank Gore with the University of Miami. He really only had one solid, complete season in college. He tears his left ACL in spring ball of 2002, rehabs all of 2002, returns in 2003, and tears his right ACL. So then he goes into 04 and has a great year and is selected in the 3rd round. And now we know he wins the NFC rushing title in 2006. He's a 3-time Pro Bowl selection, a big part of the 49ers' success this past year that got them to the NFC Championship game. Those 4 guys, all premier backs in this league at one point or another, all had different recovery schedules. Some, like McGahee and James, it took them a prolonged amount of time. Some, like Gore, it took them time after time after time, but when they got to play, they did. And then you had guys like Jamal Lewis who were able to bounce back immediately. I mentioned a player like Kajana Carter out of Penn State. Yes, it happened in 1995, so you're looking at what? That's 17 years ago? Is that right? My math in my head, I'm not sure.
That sounds right.
But the technology completely different. But he's a guy, and there's stories like him who get hurt, and it's over. They can never recover from that injury.
And a lot of it is mental. And if you talk to the players, or if you talk to someone who's had that before, I don't know if you've ever had that injury, or if anyone's ever had any sort of injury, it's almost, I couldn't imagine trying to have your knee completely damaged and not be able to walk on it or run on it. It almost feels like the bottom half of your leg is, it would fall off if you pick it up, is kind of what I was explaining to me how it felt. How to go back to the way you were and running full speed and, hit the guy to try to get that extra 5 to 10 yards. Players come back and they do it. They completely are able to block that out of their mind, because for every player that has an injury, they always go back to, there's always that moment right before it happens. It's like any player that ever injures themselves would always say, you don't ask them, like, what happened? They're like, I don't know. They're always like, I remember exactly what happened. I planted and I felt this and I heard this pop. And then maybe if you're running, you have a little strain, a little cramp, you start thinking about it too much, you start shielding yourself a little more. You see it happen with college football players all the time, but, there's something about NFL football players and guys like Willis McGahee, Jamal Lewis, their mental makeup that not only helps them get to the point where they were in college to get drafted, but gets them to the NFL. These are very unique people, physically, mentally, that enable them to get to this place. And Jamal is in the same realm as these guys. They're so gifted that it's hard to compare them to a normal person, how you would feel, like the competitive desire that professional level athletes have. And that's something it's hard to measure, but when you really think about it, it is amazing knowing that you could completely restructure somebody's knee and then go out there the next year and, like Jamal Lewis did, win the rushing title.
Yeah, Jamal Charles has company, obviously, in-house with Eric Berry and with Tony Muaki, but he also has company around the National Football League, and Rashard Mendenhall and Adrian Peterson, 2 premier backs for their teams, go down late last season. The thing that Charles and Mendenhall, I think, have an advantage over Peterson in their recoveries is the fact that Mendenhall's 24 and Charles is 25. Peterson's 27 years old. You look at the history of these guys, whether you go down and it's all the way back to Terrell Davis, Alandis Gary, Dominic Rhodes, Deuce McAllister, Lamont Jordan, Ronnie Brown, Cadillac Williams. The younger a player is, the quicker and better it seems they bounce back. And Charles has that going for him, I think, if you want to look at positives in this whole
long
recovery
term,
process.
yes, but I would also say, if the injury was going to happen to Jamal, when it happened was a good time because he's had, he had the surgery, then he was able to rehab during the season. Now, a guy like Adrian Peterson or Rashard Mendenhall, if you're the Vikings or if you're the Steelers, those injuries happen so late that you're not only worried if they're going to come back 100%, you're worried if they're going to come back at all. And then you're talking free agency, you're talking draft. I mean, you got to go get a running back because you don't know if he's going to be healthy, not even, for the future, but even this year. It's like when Rashard Mendenhall does come back, he's missing some cycles, and Adrian Peterson is exactly the same way. It doesn't matter, if you're worried if they're going to be coming back, healthy and at 100% because they're not going to be fully recovered. And that's a position that I'm glad we're not in.
Average recovery time for ACL injury, 6 to 9 months. When the Chiefs open training camp in the end of July, Jamal Charles will be at 10 months since that injury, just over 10 months since that injury occurred. So he should be, if all things are a go, should be at full go by training camp. And we'll keep an eye on Jamal Charles and our other 2 injury rehabs throughout the offseason on KCChiefs.com. So keep checking back throughout this offseason program. The players will be in here until early June, late May, early June. There'll be rookie mini camps, there'll be mini camps, there'll be workouts, the whole 9 yards. We'll cover it all here on KCChiefs.com. Quick break. We'll talk to Kevin Boss about his recent trip to Haiti. Come here and join the Kansas City Chiefs.
Together, we are music. Hearts beating to the same drum. We are many, but we are one. Brothers of the Sun.
The concert event of the year. Brothers of the Sun Tour. Superstars Kenny Chesney, Tim McGraw. With Grace Potter and the Nocturnals and Jake Owen. Tickets are on sale now. Presented by Corona Light.
So I'm just sit right here and have another beer in Mexico. It's summertime. Sweet summertime.
The new Chiefs team store is located on the Founders Plaza on the north side of the new Arrowhead Stadium. Open on game days and from 10 to 6 Monday through Saturday throughout the season, the team store has the largest selection of Chiefs merchandise in the Kansas City area. Featuring official sideline apparel from Reebok, and you can shop 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at kcchiefs.com. They sacrifice, they protect, they answer the call at all times. They are the men and women of our armed forces, and their will, heart, dedication, and service to the country that we call home is nothing less than extraordinary. Return the favor. Text the word return to 90999 now for your $10 donation, or simply visit returnthefavor.org. Please join us in returning the favor.
Josh Looney back with you alongside Brad Young for the second half hour of Chiefs Live, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers. In the second half hour, we will hear from Chiefs tight end Kevin Boss, as well as Lance Zierlein of the SidelineView.com, and who he mocks the Chiefs in the 2012 NFL Draft. Let's first talk about Kevin Boss. Brad, you were one of the first ones to get to meet Kevin Boss shortly after he signed his contract. How did he come across to you?
Came across to me, obviously very tall. He was very tall. Yeah, you guys saw the interview. But he was a really, really nice guy. I mean, I was kind of nervous going into it because I don't really, I'm not you, and I don't really get to do that as much. But when it came down to it, he really made me feel comfortable because he was a very, very nice guy. I mean, he was a very good-hearted, warm guy, and we kind of talked before while everyone was kind of getting set up, and I know we talked about the weather or just talk about anything. I mean, he's a really nice guy, other than the fact that he's a freakishly tall athlete, and he catches touchdown passes. Other than that, he's a really, really nice guy. And then after that, I started following him a little bit more, and that's when I started to notice about all the charitable stuff that he does and how he gives back to the community. And it's just, it's an unbelievable thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting story with him and what he's done in Haiti recently. And in fact, if you saw on KCChiefs.com last week, we had the pictures that we got from his friends, and we'll show them to you here in this clip of Kevin, 1 week into his tenure with the Chiefs, hasn't strapped on a helmet, hasn't worn a pad, hasn't caught a ball, is loaded with Chiefs gear, giving to orphans in Haiti. And I was able to catch up with Kevin about that trip to Haiti, what he was able to do there, as well as what he hopes to get accomplished this offseason with the Kansas City Chiefs. Kevin, you're in the process of making the big move from California to your new home here in Kansas City. How's everything going?
Oh, it's going well. You know, just getting things finished up out here in California, and looking forward to getting back out to Kansas City and calling that home and getting to work with the team.
We received an interesting email from one of your good friends, Denny Bain, earlier last week. Had a lot of photos of the mission trip you went on with him and his LovingHaiti.org nonprofit to a small village in Haiti where you helped out with Haitian orphans, with the church there, feeding kids. Tell us about that trip and how you got involved with Denny.
So Denny and I grew up together in Oregon, just a lifelong friend, and he's been going back to Haiti for the last couple of years now, and is actually in the process of adopting 2 little girls from the orphanage, him and his wife Abby. And he was going back out just this past March and asked me if I wanted to come along, and I jumped at the opportunity just because it was one of those once in a lifetime trips and life-changing trips that I really wanted to do, and I was really glad I was able to do it. And it was one of those just things that I want to do it again because it was so neat.
You've been all over the country and the world, really, over the last month. How crazy has it been for you? You're released by the Oakland Raiders. You come out to Kansas City. You sign with the Kansas City Chiefs. A week after that, you go to Haiti. You come back from Haiti. You go back to Oakland and you're home there. And now you're coming back to Kansas City. This process, how much of a whirlwind has it been?
Like you said, it was a whirlwind, just getting released and flying out to Kansas City, signing there, and then before I knew it, I was on my way to Haiti, and it kind of got close there for a minute where I almost had to cancel the trip, but I really wanted to make it work and was really looking forward to going on that trip. So we made it work, and thankfully my pregnant wife allowed me to go and do that, and I'm going to hopefully take her next time I go. But yeah, and then I asked Brad kind of a last minute deal if there was any way I could get some Chiefs gear. So Alan and Kyle from the equipment managers took good care of me there and sent me out some Chiefs gear, and it was a lot of fun to give the kids the Chiefs got everyone a shirt and hat, and also brought down some Nike shoes, and everyone got a new pair of shoes. So just to see the smiles on those kids' face was well worth it.
We're nearly 2 years after that devastating earthquake in Haiti, left hundreds of thousands of people dead and over 1 million orphans left behind, and it's been a very slow recovery process for that entire country. What stuck out to you about the people there on your trip and how they're handling that recovery process?
The kids from the orphanage, and then the people from the town of Peon that belong to the church there that Pastor Francois runs, they don't really have very much at all. But what I saw, that was really inspiring to me was just their unwavering, just their faith that, everything was going to be all right, their faith and that God was going to provide for them. And that's something that they really held on to and cherished, and something that, like I said, was just incredibly inspiring to me.
If you had to pick a favorite thing you did in Haiti, what is that one memory that will last forever for you that you took away from that trip?
Just hanging out with the kids. That was the most rewarding and just most enjoyable time of the whole trip. We did work hard when we were there and worked on some projects, but the best part really was just the day-to-day, spending time with the kids, playing games, and just getting to know the kids. And even though there was a language barrier, we all connected so fast, and You know, that was the hardest part was leaving the kids. You know, it broke our hearts to leave that morning and to see, you know, some of the older kids understood that, you know, we were leaving and probably, you know, weren't going to see us for a while. And to see them in tears, you know, as we're leaving, that, you know, like I said, just really broke our hearts to leave. But it was really neat just to see those kids, and it was amazing just how fast you can fall in love with this group of 35 to 40 orphans, and just really spend a lot of time with them. And it's just amazing that amidst all the tragedy that they have gone through, just the smile on their face. And I think I left the trip kind of thinking, wow, you know, Haitian people have got the most beautiful smile I've ever seen. Just, you know, like I said, amidst all the tragedy and everything they've gone through, they just keep a smile on their face, and it was pretty neat to see.
It seems like an amazing trip, and I know Chiefs fans want to give you a big thanks on behalf of the organization. Becoming a member of this community and representing the franchise well, despite not putting on a helmet yet or even getting on the field. Switching gears a bit, you were unexpectedly released by the Oakland Raiders, and now you have a new team. What's it been like for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, but, you know, you got to just, you know, realize that it is a part of the business, and, you know, I'm just thankful that, you know, I made it that far in my career without ever being cut or released. And, you know, like you said, it was came as a bit of a surprise to me, but, you know, I look at it as a blessing in disguise now, because I feel that, you know, God has me where he wants me to be, and that's in Kansas City, and I feel real comfortable there. And you know, just the brief time that I spent out there when I came out on my visit and signed, I just feel like it's the right place for me. And like I said, looking forward to playing with this team. I think there's, you know, a lot of talent, like I said, and I think just looking into the future, it's very bright for this team.
When I talk to our new free agent signees, I've asked them all a very similar question, and it's at what point in the process, whether it was on your visit, whether it was even before the visit, did you know that Kansas City was the right place for you?
You know, I think it's just the accumulation of meeting with all the coaches, just, you know, sitting down with Mr. Pioli. You know, I think after meeting with him, I was, you know, pretty convinced and pretty sold that this is where I wanted to be. You know, he just, you know, he's just the right man for that job. You know, I feel like, you know, he's got everyone on the same page, knows how to win the right way, and just really, it seems like a great man and somebody that I want to play for, and having the chance to sit down with Coach Cornell and Coach Dable and the rest of the offensive staff, it just felt right, and just got me really excited. And you know, I was excited to sign that night. I wasn't really planning on signing until, you know, maybe the next day or a couple of days. I was going to take a couple of days to think about it, but, you know, I called my agent and said, you know, this just feels right, and I want to sign tonight. So we got it done, and just was really happy that it worked out like it did.
It's a new environment for you here in Kansas City. How much do you know about this team? Have you talked to any of the teammates? Have you had much interaction, or are you heading in to this week of workouts kind of a stranger to your new place?
You know what, I did. I talked to Matt Castle. He reached out to me, which was awesome that he took the time to do that and to call me and congratulate me on signing, and, you know, just kind of said, you know, looking forward to playing together. And, you know, I really appreciated that because, you know, he didn't need to do that, but, you know, it made me excited to you know, just get out there and play with him. And, you know, I'm just, like I said, excited to meet the rest of the guys and look forward to getting to work on Monday.
Well, it is time for the off-season program. It's begun this week. Are you planning to be here for the long haul? Are you going to be able to make all of the workouts? What's your plan and the move and your approach to this off-season?
Yeah, we're actually flying out to Tulsa in the next couple of days, spend a couple of days with my brother before driving down to Kansas City next weekend, and then I'll be there Monday to get back to work with the team, and looking forward to meeting the guys and start learning the offense. And I feel this feels like the most anxious I have been to get back to football. I don't know, just being on a new team, and I feel excited about our opportunity with the Chiefs and the talent that we have, and just really looking forward to getting to work with the guys.
Kevin, can't wait for the opportunity to meet you in person. I know a lot of Chiefs fans are excited about your signing. Good luck with the whole process of getting settled in, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, absolutely, and I can't wait.
On the field, Brad, and the Chiefs before him in the NFL draft, you think we're probably hot for a tight end. Who knows? Maybe they still select him. I think the position, the need there goes down significantly with the Boss signing. If Milwaukee's able to get healthy in return, you have him, you have Boss, and Jake O'Connell's back and will trying to work his way in, but focus on Steve Maneri as he's shifting from offensive tackle to tight end. I think he could be, if he can make the team, that perfect guy as your kind of third tight end that's just that extra blocker, can kind of be an emergency valve from time to time. We saw him catch a pass last year as a tackle eligible, but be that sixth offensive lineman. That's really what you want your third tight end to be. Anyway, I think the tight end for this team is much better off with Kevin Boss than obviously it was before free agency.
And the fact that he used to play for the Raiders, I just think deep down he's going to really want to stick it to the Raiders those 2 times this next season, and I bet Chiefs fans wouldn't mind seeing that either.
Well, if tight end's off the board for the Chiefs, who knows? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't for this year's draft. But Lance Zierlein, the SidelineView.com, checks in with us to give us his take on not only the Chiefs draft possibilities at number 11, but also in the second round and in those middle rounds as well. Talk to Lance, and as always, offers great insight on not just the Chiefs, but the prospects and where they might end up. Let's take a look. Welcome back to Chiefs Live, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers as we continue our path to prime time in 2012, talking Chiefs NFL draft with Lance Zierlein of the SidelineView.com, Houston Chronicle, and the Big Show 790 AM in Houston. Lance, thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, it's good to be on, Josh.
I tell you what, you were one of the first guys on the Sideline View in your 2-round mock to have Ryan Tannehill mocked to the Chiefs at number 11. This was a few weeks ago. You had that posted. Number one, why do you think he may fall to the Chiefs at 11, and do you think that's a viable pick for them?
Well, it really depends on how desperate a team is to trade up. I obviously didn't think Jake Locker was worth being drafted where he was. I thought Ponder was drafted too high, but that's the nature of the beast. We already know teams are going to overdraft quarterbacks, and so that's going to happen. And Tannehill probably won't make it to 11. In my mock, though, what happened with me is that I got to number 8 where everyone's plugging Tannehill in, and I looked at Miami and I said, well, Matt Moore finished the season pretty well last year. He did pretty well. You added David Garrard over there as a veteran. You could add Tannehill there if you want, but they are a mess at wide receiver at number 8. And in my mock, I had Justin Blackmon falling and available at number 8. And I know a lot of teams philosophically are against adding a wide receiver that high unless they feel like they're elite. But that's a team that really is desperate right now for wide receiver help. And so once I plugged in Blackmon there, I had Tannehill sliding. Now the reality is the team may trade up and try to grab him at number 9, number 10, or maybe even number 11. But with the Chiefs, I know they've said they'd like to have some competition for Matt Castle. And yeah, you've got Brady Quinn on the roster. That's fine and good, but I just wouldn't rule out if he only likes a player as a football player and thinks he has a chance to be special. I certainly wouldn't rule out any position because the Belichick school of evaluation revolves around finding great football players or players who can become great, and you don't worry about who's in front of them. You just take good football players. So if they had a high grade on a player like Tannehill, I don't think Castle or Quinn being there is going to preclude them at all from taking a look at that position. But to be honest with you, Josh, in my updated mock that I'm working on right now, I'm going to have Tannehill going before that because I just don't think he's going to fall outside of the top 10.
If he were to fall out of the top 10, what do you think the trade activity would be if he were at the Chiefs 11? If the Chiefs, and Scott Pioli's been known to trade back, that whole New England valuing draft picks, getting maybe an extra an extra guy in a third or a second or whatever you could get. What do you think the market would be if he did fall to the Chiefs at 11, if the Chiefs were looking to trade that pick?
You know, that's interesting because Flynn, I think Matt Flynn takes Seattle out of the equation. And not that Seattle might move up one spot, might not, but I think Seattle's probably out of the equation now with Flynn. I think you have obviously two other teams in Indy and Washington are off the board right now. And if Cleveland passes on them once at 4, or if they like Tannehill, they could decide to trade back from 4 a couple of spots, or they could look to use their second draft pick in the first round and some additional picks to move up and come get Tannehill again if they decided to keep their pick at number 4. So I definitely think there would be interest in adding Tannehill via trade. The question is, who are the trade partners? I mean, who has the additional picks to come up and get that? I really don't know that you're going to see Scott Pioli super excited about trading back into the mid-20s or somewhere back into 22. I think he'd probably like to stay in the mid to late teens if possible, so that he could still target a nose or a defensive end to plug into that defense if he so chooses, because that's a pretty good area to find the positions that you're looking for.
In your first mock, you have David DeCastro, who is very popular with the Chiefs fan base and probably one of the safer picks on this board. Fits a lot of things the Chiefs do schematically and is kind of the offensive line that you would think Scott Pioli might be leaning toward. You have him going number 14 to Arizona. Would 11, in your opinion, be too high to draft an offensive guard?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like 13, 14 is probably too high to ever draft an offensive guard, just based on value of the guard position, what you can get from the guards, what you expect to get, and where you can get those same characteristics. I think it's always been the case. A lot of teams philosophically refuse to draft safeties and guards inside the top 20. They don't believe in it. And I think Arizona is probably the earliest that DeCastro could go at 13. But even at 13, the question is going to be, if we need offensive line help, do we go get a tackle, or do we get a little safer pick in a guard who might not have as much impact on our pass protection? I think Chiefs at 11, I definitely think that's too early. But if you were to tell me they were to trade back into the early 20s, late teens, I wouldn't be shocked to see them target a guard. Logan Mankins was the pick of the New England Patriots. That was the very back end of the first. And that guy has been a hammer for them for years and years. So to me, guards a lot of times are some of the best values that you can find late in the first round, at times in the early second, because of how long they can play and at what kind of level. The Chiefs know that full well with the great guard play they've had over the years. But at the same time, man, that's tough action, drafting a guard and paying him number 11 money. Even with the CBA leveling out some of those salaries, Josh, you just won't see that very often.
Right. The favorite to go to Kansas City, it seems right now, is Boston College linebacker Luke Kuechly. He's a guy you have going number 12 to Seattle, just behind the Chiefs. And I'm interested, you say he's a guy that, that all the personnel men love, that you talk to, that watch him on film. He's clean. He's a solid player, but you just like him. You don't love him. Can you explain your analysis on Luke Kuechly?
To me, Josh, it gets down to taste of what you like in your linebackers. I like my linebackers to be take-on players a little bit more. I understand that's not really necessarily how all the teams coach it down, how the game is played. There were some instances where I'd watch him in games and on tape, and I'd see a guy who wasn't the most physical player, avoided some contact, which got him pushed around when offensive linemen got up on him. He had a hard time dislodging. I thought his instincts are great, and if you've got great instincts and you get downhill quickly, you don't have to worry quite as much about having offensive linemen, plug you up. You're the one beating into the spot anyway. But I see Dante Hightower, who I think bumps a little bit more. I see a guy like Michael Kendricks, who I think can be had in the second round, an inside linebacker from Cal. I just kind of like that value more. I think what Michael Kendricks brings to the table is not going to be that far off from Luke Kuechly, to be honest with you, but you'll have to pay a lot more money for Luke Kuechly at inside linebacker. So I like him. I just haven't been as in love with him during the process as most evaluators. And I'm talking about guys on teams that I really respect. I'm talking about scouts who I've respected for years, and they all like him. So I certainly don't have a lot of confidence in my evaluation of him, but from my personal standpoint of taste, he he hasn't really excited me so far when I've watched him.
Lance, one of the Chiefs' biggest needs heading this draft remains nose tackle. It's something the Chiefs have really just kind of found a one-year plug-and-play guy each year that Scott Pioli has been here since 2009. With that said, Dontari Poe had great combine workouts, but I'd say fans here in Kansas City are a little hesitant with him because obviously the tape doesn't match the hype or the big P word, the potential. What's your view on Dontari Poe? I know you've got him going right now, number 9 to Carolina. Have you bought into all that combine hype with this guy?
No, I really haven't, but make no mistake about it, I think he's going to be drafted high because of his potential, the P word. He's got the size, he's got the feet, he's got the quickness of size, he's got the potential, and somebody's going to feel like we can coach him up, we can get the most out of him. I just really have a hard time buying into a guy with that type of physical ability who's not dominating Conference USA competition. It just doesn't make sense to me. There needs to be a level of dominance there from snap to snap. It's one thing not to be coached properly or maybe not take coaching, maybe your technique is bad. It's another when you don't take your sheer physical strength. I'll put it to you, you're a basketball guy. We've seen guys like Shaq. Shaq knew early in his career, I'm bigger than everybody, and I'm gonna impose my will with my size. You love those guys because you know that they're going to take what their physical, natural, God-given ability, and they're going to do something with it. And that ability just happens to be size and quickness. Then you see other bigs who stand outside and want to shoot threes. Well, they're wasting the natural advantage they have. And I feel like Dontari Poe has wasted a lot of that natural advantage that he has. So I think he'll be drafted high. And Pioli might be the guy to pull that trigger as well because I think he can play nose or the 3-4 defensive end, the 5 technique spot. But honestly, I would rather wait until second or third round and go look at a guy like Josh Chatner from Alabama. He's a 2-gap defensive tackle. That's what he does. He's a nose. You're not going to move him around easily. He can hold up at the point of attack. He's game ready because he comes from Nick Saban's scheme. To me, you start talking about value, I got potential here, or I got a guy that I feel a lot more comfortable with where his floor is in Josh Chapman from Alabama. So I have a funny feeling that he could go to the Chiefs, no doubt, but honestly, I don't know. Because of his film not matching up, I'm not sure that Pioli is going to want to buy into him quite like they did with Tyson Jackson, who also had some film issues and really hasn't panned out to what you expected from him based on his size.
Now, speaking of Tyson Jackson, you have him and Glenn Dorsey, 2 LSU alums at the defensive end post, and Romeo Crennel's 3-4 defense. And a dark horse pick to the Chiefs also seems to be another LSU defensive lineman in Michael Brockers. Do you see that being a possible pick for the Chiefs, and what do you think about Brockers?
Absolutely. I think Brockers would be a great fit. And honestly, I still feel like I love that Dorsey has battled and fought and made him turn himself into a player, even though he's clearly out of position in the Chiefs 3-4. I think he's a much better fit as a 3 technique in the 4-3. But you look at Michael Brockers. Michael Brockers is not a pass rusher. But what he is a guy who plays with better power than he showed at the combine. The numbers they kind of belie the fact that he plays with a good deal of power. He is a 2-gapper. He can set the edge. I think he would be a fantastic fit from a size, strength, pedigree standpoint for Kansas City at that position at the 5 technique. I feel much more comfortable with Brockers than with Poe. I think his ceiling may not be as high, but his floor is much, much higher. And to me, he would make a lot more sense. And if I did something like that, I would probably consider dealing Glenn Dorsey to a 43 team looking for an inside 1-gap player who can get up the field and disrupt. That's probably what I would like to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. If they took Brockers, I think most Chiefs fans would anticipate a trade market opening up for Glenn Dorsey. In fact, there's been trade rumblings involving him for the past few years. Nothing concrete or serious, I think, but I think it's always been an option of a 4-3 team to possibly acquire Dorsey. And here in Kansas City, he has been the most active defensive lineman for this team. He is one of the few guys that plays in sub-package and base sets on that defensive line, so he has had a lot of value for the Chiefs. Lance Zierlein of the SidelineView.com is with us on Chiefs Live, brought to you by your Midwest Ford dealers. Lance, the thing I like about your mock draft on the Sideline View is you go 2 rounds, and in the second round you have the Chiefs taking cornerback Trumaine Johnson out of Montana. I think that a lot of fans have written off cornerback as a possible draft possibility for the Chiefs in the second, third, or fourth round, mainly because Stanford Routt has come in to replace Brandon Carr. I don't think that's a good thing to assume because the way Romeo Crennel plays sub-package defense, there's almost 50% of the snaps now. He's got 5 DBs out there. What do you like about Trumaine Johnson and then how he would fit into Romeo Crennel's defense?
Let me address cornerback philosophy first for a second. I think one of the biggest mistakes that fans make is they'll see a guy drafted in the second or third round and they assume, or a free agent coming and they say, okay, that's it. You'll just have to ride or die with that guy for a while. There's no other, we'll just have to see how it works out. At what other point do you do that? In baseball, do they only have 5 pitchers they come into camp with and nobody can earn a spot in the 5-man rotation? That's ludicrous. You have competition, and I think one of the things that Scott Pioli understands, based on his background with Belichick, that has a great understanding of defensive backs, is you never know where your talent or your starters are going to come from. You never know when you're going to miss on a guy. Stanford Routt is a known commodity and quantity, and that's great, and he has fantastic speed. I don't think he's the be-all, end-all. I'm not even sure that he's any kind of an upgrade from Carr. As a matter of fact, I'd tell you he's not an upgrade. So I think one of the things that you need to do is throw another cornerback into the mix, and you have to have 3 corners at this day and age. You must have 3 corners who can play because, as you mentioned, the sub-packages that you have to have available, it gives you more flexibility defensively. It gives you the ability to match up. Trumaine Johnson, over 6 foot, over 200 pounds, physical, has a great nose for the ball. A little bit, he's got a little off-the-field stuff you have to be okay with, but I don't think it's going to be something that knocks a bunch of people off the draft board or knocks him off the draft board of a lot of teams. But his ability to play physically and to have that nose for the ball to make plays and potentially even play some safety, to me, makes him a great pick in the second round. I've got scout friends who handle defensive backs who say that he's a better player and will be a better pro than Janoris Jenkins. So because he's long, because he's physical, and because he has that nose for the ball to either play in a cover 2 zone scheme where he sits and reads the quarterback or maybe even in a straight man-to-man, I think that's one of the reasons Romeo Crennel would love him. He's got the ability to be physical, and I think that matters to Romeo Crennel.
To add to your point on cornerbacks, it's worth noting, and these guys haven't exactly panned out the way I think most fans would hope, but Scott Pioli is taking a corner in each of his 3 drafts in Kansas City. In 2009, he took Donald Washington, who's since moved to safety, Javier Arenas in a nickel role in 2010, and last year Jaleel Brown out of Colorado. So he's obviously been trying to stockpile young talent at cornerback, and you mentioned guys 2nd, 5th round. Look at the 2008 draft. Brandon Flowers, 2nd-round pick for the Chiefs. Brandon Carr, a 5th-round pick for the Chiefs, and they've been the mainstay up until what's going to be the 2012 season. Speaking of mid-rounds, Lance, running back, the Chiefs have Jamal Charles, they have Peyton Hillis, they have Dexter McCluster. However, they still have room for addition, in my opinion, especially not knowing exactly how Charles will bounce back from that left ACL injury. Who do you like in the mid-rounds as a possibility for running back? Obviously, there's the kid out of Boise State. You've got Turbin from Utah State. Is there anybody that sticks out to you as a real good possibility as a running back in those middle rounds?
Well, I think what you have to do is decide what do you want to go after. You got the banger in Hillis. You got the utility man in Dexter. So you're going to look at Jamal Charles. I'm not sure what you're going to get from Jamal Charles. Then find a guy who might play like Jamal Charles, so that you don't have duplication from one back to the next with the Charles type and the Peyton Hillis type. And one guy that you could look for, and I'd say in later rounds maybe, would be Michael Smith. He's a running back out of Utah State, tested off the charts, a phenomenal athlete. He's a little bit limited, but he's a great value because you'll get him probably beyond the 4th round, play some special teams for you, have some home run hitting ability, with the ability to take it to the house. I don't think the Chiefs would look at a running back within the first 2 rounds, and I think Doug Martin from Boise State, as you mentioned, I think he goes in the second. I know a couple teams that really, really like Doug Martin and feel like he's the 2nd best back in this draft. So I don't think he makes it out of the second. I think Bernard Pierce is another guy that if he lasted into, I'd prefer some type of trade back scenario and get him probably, or maybe even sit tight in the 4th round, and hopefully he falls to you there. If you want a guy with the ability to maybe get you 8 carries in a game but can play on sub-packages and special teams, then Isaiah Pete from Cincinnati, if he were to fall to you, that would be a guy that I think you could look at and really concentrate on Dexter being a more of just a slot receiver and a little bit less of a running back. worried about running back. Robert Turbin, another guy, once again, Utah State. 2 running backs from Utah State are going to be drafted in this year's draft. This guy came off an ACL last year and still ripped off some big runs, scored a lot of touchdowns, and his best football is probably ahead of him as he is playing his second year removed from that ACL injury. Slows down a little more than you'd like for being a for being a one-cut runner, but has some unbelievable burst. A little bit high cut, but I think he's another guy in the mid-rounds that the Chiefs might see some value in him in the middle rounds. Could also play special teams, which is very, very important if you're looking for a guy who can be your third running back.
Lance Erland of SidelineView.com breaking down draft possibilities for us. Lance, before I let you go, you've got another website that's recently new, and it's pretty interesting. It's fantasy football meets NFL draft. I've taken a look at it. I think it's going to be pretty addictive. It's playthedraft.com. Can you explain to our fans and listeners exactly what this new concept is you have?
Yeah, it's a great concept. I know Kuiper got involved with it because he loved it. I got involved with it. We always talk about a guy's draft stock is going up or down. And the 2 guys who created this game, they said, well, let's turn it into a stock market. Let's take every NFL prospect and create stock prices for them that go up and down from the Senior Bowl all the way through the NFL draft and wherever they allow you to buy or sell these players anytime you like, and their stocks are going up and down, up and down. And your portfolio will change. If you buy a guy low and sell him high, let's say you got Dontari Poe at the very beginning, he shot way up, and everyone was talking about him being in the top 10. You sold him, and now some people are cooling on him a little bit because his tape isn't as good. But then you played it just like the stock market. You bought low and you sold high. And then wherever a guy gets drafted, whoever you have in your portfolio of players, wherever they get drafted, it's worth a certain monetary value. And whoever has the most at the end of the game, they're the winner. So it's a really cool game because you can kind of test yourself against other amateur draftniks and even the experts and say, I think this guy's going to be red hot, or I think this guy's going to get drafted higher on draft day, or I think this guy's going to run fast at the combine, so I'm going to buy him now, and then after the combine, when he runs fast and his stock shoots up, I'm going to sell him after that. That's the kind of the buy and the sell and the stock market approach that really, really works. I'm updating my mock draft personally that I put in there, and the stock prices are determined by mock drafts of 37 draft experts from around the internet, and so it's changing every single week. You've got a new set of stock prices. So if you guys are interested, I'll let all your listeners who reply to me put you in a league absolutely free. Give you a free league to play in with the Sideline View. If you like it, you can sign up for your a group league with your friends. You can play in the Mel Kiper Global Exchange. But just send me an email at sidelineview@gmail.com. Sidelineview@gmail.com. Let me know you heard it on Josh's show, and I'll give you an invite for absolutely free into a league.
Very cool. I think we'll have a lot of people take up that offer. I'll already say I've made my value picks a few weeks ago just playing around on the site. Washington's Alameda Ta'amu. I'm hoping his stock shoots up. And then a favorite of mine at the Senior Bowl, George Iloka of Boise State, was another one that I picked and hope he'll go a little bit higher. It's a really cool concept, and I think a lot of fans, especially those that are super into the draft, will definitely enjoy.
By the way, my man Russ Land, who I respect a lot, former NFL scout, he's got Ta'amu going to the Chiefs at number 11.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that yesterday. I like that.
Play right there.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll go that high, but I tell you what, I think he definitely fits the Chiefs' needs, and I was hoping to see his stock shoot up a few weeks ago when I made that pick on playthedraft.com. So I hope you're right, or I hope Russ is right. I hope he does end up going at 11. Lance, thanks a bunch for breaking down draft possibilities for us. As always, man, right on the money.
Anytime. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Josh. Good luck to the Chiefs.
All right, take care. That wraps up this week's Chiefs Live. Next week, it's the much anticipated, well, it's the NFL draft, but it's also the much anticipated Chiefs Live mock draft. Well, I'll mock each of Kansas City's draft picks, rounds 1 through 7. Get your feedback live, whether it's positive or negative, right here on the show. And, of course, play it back for everyone to hear. Last year, had Justin Houston in the first round as we made our pick a week early before some news hit that hurt his draft stock. I'll hang my hat on that because in the last 2 years of doing the mock draft, Justin Houston although I had him in the first and he won the third, is the only player I've correctly mocked to Kansas City since Scott Pioli has arrived. So we'll have a lot of fun, do the mock draft next week on Chiefs Live. And, of course, we'll also become with you live from the Chiefs season ticket holder draft party at the Chiefs training facility. If you're a season ticket holder, come on out. It's going to be a great party. I'll be live on stage with Mitch Holthus and other personalities. We'll have players there. We'll have some food, some drink. It'll be a great time, and we'll take in what will be the Chiefs 2012 NFL Draft. If you're not a season ticket holder, we'll get your season tickets and come. But if you don't want to buy season tickets, there's also a party going on at the 810 Zone in Leawood. That's going to be an awesome time, ton of fun. 810 has some special live radio remotes going on, some prizes, and all TVs, of course, will be tuned to the NFL Draft with Chiefs fans celebrating, cheering, hissing, doing whatever you want about the picks that lead up to the Chiefs draft pick, and, of course, whoever becomes the first-round pick of the Kansas City Chiefs in 2012. And, of course, if you're out of state or you just want to stay at home, you can watch the Chiefs Draft Day Party right here on KCChiefs.com on our special Chiefs Live. So 2 times for you next week, same normal time on Tuesday at noon, and we'll be on with you Thursday evening for the Chiefs Draft Day Party for season ticket holders. We'll see you next week, twice on Chiefs Live.